sports. It's in the game.
So the race to the title begins now. We're at the second half of the Formula 1 2021 season, round 11 of 20 at the Hungarian Grand Prix. A favourite track for championship leader Lewis Hamilton. Off the high of his British Grand Prix victory, he's now going to go for his 9th round this circuit. It's famous, it's Monaco without the barriers, it's 14 corners, it's 2.7 miles with 2 DRS zones, although the second one probably couldn't be really considered a zone as the straight is so short, but it has helped with overtaking, so I guess we can't really knock it. And whoa, 11 rounds in and we still have had no appearance from either safety car. I believe we are on for a record as the first full season of Formula 1 without the appearance of a safety car even once. That could be quite interesting. Let's have a look at the grid then. Valtteri Bottas spoiled the party for Lewis Hamilton a little bit by taking pole position, but Mercedes once again locked out the front row as their resurgence is on. Sergio Perez goes from 3rd ahead of Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris goes ahead of Carlos Sainz as the romance on row 3. Sebastian Vettel lines up alongside Max Verstappen, who took a 5-race grid penalty. It was probably coming, to be fair, with the amount of failures they've had. Yuki Tsunoda goes from 9th with Lance Stroll getting into the top 10, I believe, for the first time this season. The Alfa Romeos go up to 11th and 12th as they were promoted through grid penalties to the 6th row. George Russell lines up alongside Aiden Jackson, the first of the grid penalty, well, the second of the grid penalty went to Pierre Gasly down in 15th, and then Nicholas Latifi. Both Alpines down in the penultimate row of the grid. Mick Schumacher goes from 19th because Daniel Ricciardo was another driver that had to suffer another component change for his McLaren Mercedes. So a plethora of grid penalties have helped many people out today, and Alfa Romeo will be licking their lips at this prospect because they're ahead of both HAAS drivers. Jackson has historically struggled this weekend. He's really had it tough round here. He's been really kind of highly critical of the steering of the car, which is very unusual considering Aiden Jackson has been one of the great corner takers, but I'm guessing it's the characteristic of the circuit just doesn't seem to suit him. I don't think he did too well in the Formula 2 last year either. So it is a track that he's historically struggled at. Compare that to Lewis Hamilton, who's going for his 9th win at this circuit. But Valtteri Bottas once again just has the upper hand over him for most of the time. So Hamilton is going to need another good start to get ahead here. This track is notoriously known for its lack of overtaking. I think we all remember, I think it was Thierry Boutsen who won here, holding off a hard-charging Nigel Mansell, I believe it was, who later on in time after that went to win his one and only championship back in 1992 with the Williams team. And contrast that with today, and they line up 13th and 16th. I can't really tell from here, but there was a plethora of grid penalties to help out with that. George Russell getting his highest position of the season, that is 13th. Jackson's 14th, Gasly, and then 16th for the TV, so I was correct there. So it is all eyes on the battle at the front. It's going to be difficult for Jackson. He is an overtake specialist, as we know, but it's going to be very few opportunities to pass. So I'm sure Jackson will be looking at the start, and he needs to get ahead of the Alfa Romeos because they've got a good chance here to leapfrog HAAS in the Constructors' Championship. HAAS now have 3 points thanks to Jackson's point at the British Grand Prix. Alfa Romeo only have the 1 from Antonio Giovinazzi this season. So if anybody needs a good race from this position to be advantageous, it's the Alfa Romeos. There's also a championship to think about. Championship leader Lewis Hamilton alongside Valtteri Bottas on the front row. Green flag, 5 red lights. It is lights out and away we go for the Hungarian Grand Prix, and Valtteri Bottas seems to have got a good start. Hamilton gets brought down a little bit and Bottas goes to the right to cover off the inside line. There's Charles Leclerc on the inside of Lewis Hamilton, and he is going to get past him, is he? We cut away, and he did. Charles Leclerc got ahead of Lewis Hamilton. There's Aiden Jackson. He's already showing his 11th, so another 5 places gained at the start by Aiden Jackson. He got ahead of both Alfa Romeos. That is absolutely crucial for Jackson to be where he is. Even if he's not in the points, at least he's stopping the Alfa Romeos from getting points in that scenario. That's a great start by Jackson. Great start by Charles Leclerc. Great start by Valtteri Bottas as well, getting away at the front. Charles Leclerc ahead of Lewis Hamilton. What a start by Charles Leclerc. Ferrari have come on leaps and bounds this season, it has to be said. There's Daniel Ricciardo. He obviously started last place. He's going to stay there for now as he chases Mick Schumacher in the HAAS. And we could see a lot of overtaking from Daniel Ricciardo today. Another overtake specialist. But since 2017, when these cars were made much wider, it makes Hungaroring even more difficult to pass. And I guess we'll see. But at the front, Bottas already leading by almost a second ahead of Charles Leclerc as he stays ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Bottas is on the soft tyres, Leclerc on the soft tyres. I think the majority of the top 10 are on the soft tyres. Where is Max Verstappen? He is P7 as we come to the end of the first racing lap. Yuki Tsunoda has made his way into the points. Pierre Gasly has made a good start as well. He's 12th now. He started behind Jackson on the grid and he's now made his way up to 12. So there has been a few movers at the start. Let's see the start of Valtteri Bottas then. And pretty much as expected, he pretty much leads from the front then. And he's going to go to the right to cover the inside line. Takes the corner perfectly. Wonderfully taken by Valtteri Bottas. He really is up for this championship this year. And it's been the first time since he's been about it. Look at Charles Leclerc here. He actually gets a little bogged down. But then sees an inside line approaching and passes Perez and Hamilton in that corner. Wonderful start. Wonderful first corner by Charles Leclerc. And if he can stay there, that would be very crucial for Valtteri Bottas' championship aspirations. So here's the start from Jackson, because we seem to view this a lot. And there's the AlphaTauri there of Gasly getting absolutely offline like a bullet. Now what if Gasly was so far at the grid? And there's Jackson doing vintage dive bomb into turn 1, clean as you like, no contact, and ahead of both Alfa Romeos. HAAS need to hope that Alfa Romeo don't get more points, because it's going to be very tight at the bottom. They could really do with the championship position, HAAS, considering their season. And at the end of the second lap, Bottas is already out of DRS range from Charles Leclerc, so we can expect the Mercedes just to really run away with it now, with Bottas at the front again. And what's going to be interesting here is how quickly Lewis Hamilton can dispatch of Leclerc here. He should be able to really get past him in the first couple of corners where the DRS zones are, but on the previous lap Hamilton actually was nowhere near to challenge, strangely. So it looks like Hamilton going for his 9th Grand Prix victory at the Hungarian Grand Prix would make it his most successful track, and I think he's already ahead of Michael Schumacher in the record of most wins at a single circuit. It was 8 by Schumacher, and I think Hamilton equaled that at Silverstone. But if he wins it today, he'll go ahead of Michael with that record. But he's not in position to do it at the moment. He's 3rd behind Charles Leclerc. There's Max Verstappen behind Lando Norris. Let's see if the Red Bulls can actually get to the end of the race today. We know their engine failures have pretty much crippled any championship hopes they may have had. There's still 9 rounds to go, including this one. But it is going to be very difficult. Pierre Gasly there has a look down the inside of Aiden Jackson. Nothing doing there, and Jackson is going to be a tough man to pass, as we know. And Hamilton is nowhere near close to Leclerc to get a move done into turn 1 then. So Charles has good pace down the straight, but he's out of DRS range from Bottas, which will help Hamilton out in P3 there. But again, Charles is holding on to 2nd place. And that's really credit to Ferrari. To be fair, Daniel Ricciardo was already dispatched of Mick Schumacher in the HAAS. Pretty much no surprises there. There's the Alpine of Ocon, and the Alpines have not had it good this weekend. I think the plethora of grid penalties obviously hurt them, and that's why they went on the penultimate back row of the grid, ahead of Schumacher and Ricciardo, who started at the back. And now Daniel Ricciardo is up into 19th place, chasing Ocon ahead. And the Williams of George Russell has dropped down a lot. He's down in 17th place now. Russell's lost out a lot there. Of course, Jackson had passed him with that dive bomb into turn 1. Nicholas Latifi has got into 15th place somehow. That's a great start by Latifi then. So Latifi, he's had the beating of Russell over the last couple of races, isn't he? We're expecting an imminent decision, or announcement rather, of Russell to Mercedes. But I wonder if Mercedes will hold on that, because you wouldn't really want to replace the championship winner, even though it has happened. In 1997, Damon Hill was driving with the HAAS team after being dropped by Williams after winning the title in 1996, of course. So it can happen. So will Mercedes do that if Valtteri does win the championship this season? Because we can say that Valtteri is in a championship winning position. He definitely is at the moment. He's almost 2 seconds ahead of Leclerc, and Hamilton can't get past him either. Sergio Perez is having a good one up there in P4. Lando Norris has lost out to Carlos Sainz somewhere, because Sainz and Norris was ahead of Sainz on the grid. Now Sainz is actually ahead of him in the race. Here's Jackson in a very vital P11 ahead of both Alfa Romeos, and there is now two races really. Well, there's probably 3 races. There's the one Valtteri Bottas is running out in front, and then there's everyone behind him up to Sebastian Vettel. And then there's the vintage Jackson train that is holding everyone up, which is Jackson's entitlement to do. He's not entitled just to move aside for people, and he wouldn't do it anyway, knowing Aiden Jackson's season. But here this weekend, he's had it really rough. The HAAS car has been historically a difficult car to handle, and I think Jackson this weekend has really seen just how difficult it is. But be fair to him, he's still up in P11 and ahead of both Alfa Romeos. Alfa Romeo need to score points now to get ahead of us in the standings, because Jackson has 3 points from France in the British Grand Prix. Here is Pierre Gasly down the inside. It's probably going to be an easy move for the AlphaTauri, but Jackson sticks it around the outside again. Is he going to hold it? Yes, he is. And he's going to try and stick with Gasly through into turn 2. And it's an overhead shot. It's beautiful, and it's a wonderful fight back by Aiden Jackson. They're still kind of side by side, but Jackson's the racing line into turn 3 and up to turn 4. And I really think the second DRS zone should be here, but I guess because of the uphill nature of the track, that could be a bit dangerous. So I kind of understand that. Of course, we had Felipe Massa suffering an injury into that corner when he was obviously hit by the spring of the Braun GP car of Rubens Barrichello, and he veered into the wall, and he came back stronger than ever really. He lost a bit of speed maybe, but he did recover well in the Bahrain Grand Prix opener of that season, and I think he was on the podium, I believe, as there was a pit stop going on. Who is that coming in? It's Sergio Perez. So Sergio Perez is already in the pits, lap 7, and the tyres are giving up on Perez's car, which is very unusual for 2 reasons. The Hungaroring is not one for tyre wear so much, unless you're behind other cars, and number 2, Perez is rather a specialist of holding on to his tyres and making them last, but unfortunately he's only taken them up to lap 7 in the Grand Prix. There's Aiden Jackson going around the outside of a Red Bull. He will savour that for as long as he can, I can assure you of that. He's going down. He was a bit taking a bit of a tight line into turn 2. That might compromise him, and Perez might get him up the hill to turn 4 here, because he's right on the rear wing of Jackson. Jackson's going wide, and you can already see how much Jackson is now struggling with that car, and Perez has absolutely took it ahead of Aiden Jackson. I think that was round the outside, and Jackson's just drifting wide in the corners. That HAAS is not complying with Jackson this weekend. He really is struggling, and he's now down to P12. Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso, Nicholas Latifi right behind him, and that was crucial for Perez to pass Jackson, because Jackson forms very long trains, which might help those that have to pit come out with some clean air ahead of them. Of course, in 1997 here, to continue with the Damon Hill story, he almost famously won in the Arrows, didn't he? Until a throttle cable, I think it was, came loose in his car, and it curtailed his speed And unfortunately, Jacques Villeneuve was able to pass him on the last lap and win the Grand Prix. It would have been a famous win for HAAS if they'd been able to do that, of course. Well, here's Valtteri Bottas, who now has a 2-second lead over Charles Leclerc. And he has it all under control at the front. He can even control his tyre wear and his tyres. And he's having an easy day of it. Valtteri Bottas today. Lewis Hamilton still stuck in P3 behind Leclerc. This is certainly something we're not used to. Lewis is a specialist around here. But unfortunately, he's stuck behind Leclerc. And Max Verstappen, his once was championship rival, probably isn't anymore, with all the retirements Red Bull and Verstappen in particular have had this season. And he had to take a grid penalty for a component change, and we all knew that was coming. Here is the Aston Martin boys, and what becomes of them after the rumours of last time out, with Jackson being supposedly approached by Aston Martin during the weekend as Hamilton comes into the pits. Probably to get rid of those tyres and maybe to go into better ones to challenge Leclerc later. He might be going for an undercut on Leclerc, but Leclerc came in at the same time and he has gone out ahead. So he had to follow Leclerc into the pits, and he's going to have to do it on the track now. Hard tyres, so he's going to the end. Sergio Perez might have to pit again because he's on the mediums and he put them on very early. So he might be pitting. Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez side by side into turn 2, into turn 3. Now it would be crucial here if Leclerc could pass Perez, and he doesn't. He's got a tyre disadvantage. He's going to try around the outside of turn 4. This is going to be very much Charles Leclerc. Oh my word. That could have been an airplane collision. Charles Leclerc, very feisty and very sensibly gone out of that one, because that could have been a nasty, nasty crash had that happened. But kudos to Leclerc for sticking it out, and good driving as well to recognise that that was a closing door. Good defence there by Sergio Perez. And he holds on to P7. So now the top 10, as the pit stops keep going, we're going to probably hold off on that top 10 for you for a moment. Valtteri Bottas is in. Is he going to get held up by Carlos Sainz in the pits? No, he's not. He's that far up ahead. He doesn't even have to worry about letting people past into their pit box. He should leave comfortably as he comes out, unless someone has gone on. I think someone has, and it's Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda has taken the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Well, this is a shock. Obviously he has to pit the tyres, so it's a bit it's not null and void, but it is a bit of a red herring, as it were. But here we might have a new race leader, lads. Yuki Tsunoda. We've already had Aiden Jackson and Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris leading races this season. I think Sainz and Norris led races before, but Yuki Tsunoda hasn't. This is his debut season, and he's done really well, to be fair. Yuki Tsunoda, he's piled on the points and been very close to Gasly this season. He was probably the most anticipated of the rookies this year, just because Schumacher was in a HAAS and Jackson was an unknown really. But now Jackson is stealing the headlines with performances, while Tsunoda is earning the points. Valtteri now. How long can Tsunoda stay out here? Is he going to stay out and lead the lap? He is, but look how much quicker Valtteri Bottas already is to the rear wing of Yuki Tsunoda. So Tsunoda is now going to have a race lap lead to his name, and I doubt it's going to last much longer, because that Mercedes looks absolutely mighty at the moment. We've got Lance Stroll ahead of Sebastian Vettel in P3 and P4 for respectively for Aston Martin. We've got Sergio Perez has now caught up to the back of them. He's on the medium tyres, so he may have to pit again. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton are going to the end. What tyres did Bottas put on? We didn't even see. I'm assuming you put the hards on. I mean, you could put the mediums on Bottas and he would just race away to a lead at the moment, because Bottas is absolutely flying at the moment. He's on the hard tyres, so he's going to the end as well. So no split strategies at Mercedes. I mean, Bottas has the priority, because he's so far ahead of everyone else today. He's been the better man in Hamilton this weekend. Not by much. In qualifying, it was under a tenth again. Now he's up to the back of Tsunoda. And Tsunoda's going to go again. And he's going to be down the inside. That's going to be DRS assisted by Valtteri Bottas. And no! Didn't have enough pace, Valtteri Bottas. Strange. Although there is a second DRS zone into turn 2, but it's almost pointless, really. In my opinion, the straight is too short to have any effect. You don't want it to be overpowered, though, of course. What are you trying to turn 4 now? I mean, credit to Tsunoda. He's staying ahead. Had a couple of laps now. Where will he come out in all this? I would say, looking at the interval times, he'll probably come out in around P10. I would have thought. Because it takes about 20 seconds to make a pit stop, and Jackson's holding a train. And he's 10 seconds behind Norris, so Yuki Tsunoda should comfortably come out in the points. Well, we know the Hungaroring is notoriously famous for non-passing, and even the Mercedes are feeling that effect. We know that higher downforce tracks are their weakness. Although Lewis Hamilton defied the odds in Singapore 2018 with that absolutely stunning pole position lap. But now, here comes Valtteri Bottas selling Tsunoda a dummy, taking to the outside. And will it stick? Tsunoda's going to fight it, to be fair. But Bottas is going to have DRS down the second straight. And that is it, where it is effective. And that is well played by Valtteri Bottas, but credit Tsunoda for trying to stick it in. Wonderful dummy. And shades of Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell. I think in 1987 at the British Grand Prix. And a wonderful pass. And Bottas has been taking lessons from that. And he sold Tsunoda a dummy to the inside, forcing Tsunoda to take the inside line. And then faded out to the outside and completed the move. Wonderful stuff. And Bottas, now you have to feel, will comfortably lead the rest of the way to the end of the race now. And Hamilton is stuck in this traffic jam that isn't being caused by Aiden Jackson, as he's down in P11. Aston Martins really are the corks in the bottle at the moment, though, and Tsunoda especially as well. Yeah, Tsunoda's definitely going to come out behind this train. We've got like 4 different races going on. To be fair, Tsunoda has gone by again, so Tsunoda is trying to make the tyres last a little bit longer. Of course, he's on the mediums, so it would last longer, and he's on a fresh set of mediums as well. And the man this is hurting is Lewis Hamilton. Once again, he just finds himself in a whole heap of traffic. And there's Aiden Jackson with a clear track in front of him. Bear in mind he's 11th place, but he's he's doing his vintage train holding skills, or train making skills we should say. But credit to him. And it's been a less of an eventful weekend for Jackson, but he's made enough headlines this season to last a lifetime. And here is Valtteri Bottas, comfortably the race leader, pulling out to Tsunoda by ahead of 2 seconds now. He just looks so planted. And Bottas just seems so in control and so on with that car. We've not seen this version of Bottas for a long time, if ever. This is a completely different Valtteri Bottas to the one we've witnessed in the recent past, at least. And now, Valtteri Bottas has a championship winning opportunity, and he might be taking it.
Okay mate, we have worrying signs on telemetry here. Can you check the ERS deployment for us? Okay. Yeah. It doesn't look like the battery is deploying. What? We feel you might have a software deployment glitch problem, Aiden. It should fix itself. If it doesn't, you'll just have to bear with until the end of the race, unfortunately. Wait. The ERS isn't working. Will we have to retire the car? Negative, negative. The engine is fine, it'll just be deploying that'll be the issue. It'll be locked out of deployment mode completely. Okay, copy that.
And while that's going on, Jackson is getting absolutely swamped. He has lost his ERS deployment, and that really will tell for a lot now. He's down to P13, and he's absolutely defenseless against Kimi Räikkönen and Nicholas Latifi. The good sign, the ray of sunshine for Haas here is Räikkönen is 10 seconds behind Lando Norris, which would be a point scoring position. So Jackson has done his job, not being intended to do that of course, but now he's lost ERS. And well, ERS counts for a lot at the Haas, and Jackson has really learned how to deploy it a lot better since Baku, because a lot of people probably came to the conclusion that he wasted a lot of it down the Baku straight. I mean, that is quite the thing to do, as he tries to hold it round the outside of Giovinazzi now, and you can just see how much Jackson is having to force things in that car. Because it is just not complying with it today. He has stayed ahead of Giovinazzi. Russell was taking advantage of that and passed him now. Can George Russell get past Aiden Jackson now? Jackson won't have ERS for the moment. We don't know if there's a terminal problem. Haas say that his deployment is the issue. And there's the end of that. Well, George Russell, it won't be the end of his race, so to speak, because it is the deployment, not the engine itself. And we have a bit of another train here being formed by Lance Stroll and his teammate Sebastian Vettel. And below Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton should be flying past these two, but they're not. And this is really ruining Sergio Perez's race today, because he has to let them come in again at some point. Although, really, I wouldn't really that wouldn't be a bad idea round about now. Well, Aston Martin can't double stack the cars, they're coming on again. To be fair, Aston Martins have gone quite a long way, as has Tsunoda. Tsunoda is now in, Lance Stroll and Vettel have gone by, so they're going on for another lap. Is Jackson coming in? He is. And George Russell for company, going down the pit lane. And they'll also have Ocon there as well. Now that puts Ocon into last place. Daniel Ricciardo has really struggled in this one. He's only up to P16. He's got a Merc power unit in the back of that Mercedes. It's not aiding him much today. Jackson gets out in front of George Russell in the pits. So now Jackson's involved in a fight for last place, unfortunately. There's the two Aston Martins still going on here. If they go any longer, they could probably go into the soft tyres to the end of the race. That would really be beneficial. There's still a handful of laps to go. And now Lance Stroll is coming in. Sebastian Vettel in second position. His highest position for Aston Martin so far, I believe. It's not been the greatest of returns to form for Sebastian Vettel. It was always going to be like that for him, though, to be fair. As Lance comes in, and he'll put the hard tyres on, so he's going to the end of the race now. They'll definitely make it. And Tsunoda is going to go by, so Yuki Tsunoda making use of the clear track that Aiden Jackson gave the top 10 earlier. And the man that's hurt is Pierre Gasly and Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo's now up to 13th as the pit stops continue. Mick Schumacher's in now. Jackson has barely got the legs of the Williams. And we're hearing that Jackson's ERS has fixed itself. He has deployment mode again. And now Schumacher's going to end up in last place. Oh, he's going to almost tangle there with Tsunoda. Or Ocon, rather. My apologies. And there was Sergio Perez having a look at Vettel, I think. And Ocon has beaten out Schumacher in that tussle. And Vettel's coming into the pits. So now really it's just a question of can Perez build a gap over Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton? I don't think so. Just having a look on board, like with everybody else, you can just see how much Jackson is struggling with that car. He's understeering so much. He's really having to fight it. And it's not been that bad of a car, HAAS. I think this weekend has been a real reality check for them. I mean, Schumacher is also struggling, so it's definitely a car thing. There's only so much talent can do, and Aiden Jackson is proving that today because he's had it rough. We'll have to see if Schumacher can make something of the rest about Ocon, but I don't think he's even getting there. It looks to me like Ocon is actually getting away despite being right behind George Russell. So the HAAS car has been pretty woeful round here this weekend, to the point where even Schumacher can't do anything about it. And we should be saying even Jackson in this scenario, because Jackson has run the neck of this car. Very much like Imola, it's a track where Jackson just doesn't seem to gel with it very well. He's trying his best, mind you. Well, it's pretty much going to be a procession all the way to the end now. The only real changes probably will be in the order will be when Perez has to come in for another set of mediums, most likely. This man, an 11-second lead over Sergio Perez, and that's on merit, because Bottas has been absolutely impeccable so far this race. Schumacher has kind of caught to the back of Ocon there. So let's see, Lewis Hamilton is still half a second behind Leclerc. He can't find any way past, which is so unusual for the Merc power unit. Even around here you'd expect them to be blasting past the Ferrari, but to be fair, the Ferrari B-spec power unit has had pretty, not the beating of everyone else, but is certainly drawn even over the course of the season. Sainz won the French Grand Prix, of course. They've had many podium finishes since the introduction of the B-spec unit. Jackson is just all over the road. You can see plumes of grass being kicked up by the HAAS. Jackson is valiantly trying to drive this car. Another 4-car train being led by Aiden Jackson. He must be getting pretty sick of forming these trains, but there's nothing he can really do about it. The HAAS just doesn't have the speed to really trouble even the tail end of the midfield sometimes. It's been Jackson's pure will and driving skill that have put that HAAS in points playing positions in France and Silverstone. His valiant defence against Carlos Sainz, where there was the slightest of brushes on tyre, and it may have broken Sainz's front wing as Sergio Perez has come into the pits for a second stop, so that's his race ruined because now he's down to P7 behind Max Verstappen. And to be fair, Max Verstappen being ahead of Perez is actually quite the achievement, to be fair. Started behind him on the grid. And George Russell has passed Jackson, so he can't even keep ahead of the Williams today. And Jackson, he just has to concede defeat. And he probably hates that, because Jackson does not concede defeat in Formula 1. We know this. But sometimes the car just doesn't suit the track. And I think that is the case for HAAS. The car just doesn't suit the track. The lack of downforce on that car is probably very evident. certainly in the hands of Jackson today. Tries to have a little look down the inside of George Russell, but it's too far behind. Like we said, the one silver lining for Haas this weekend is that Alfa Romeo will not be scoring points at the moment. Kimi Raikkonen is 14th and Giovinazzi is 16th, so the Alfa Romeos have actually fallen off a little bit. Alonso's now ahead of them. Alonso was 18th on the grid, so effort by Alonso, to be fair. Is that Max Verstappen catching Carlos Sainz? It might have been, you know. They're very close together, being led by Leclerc. Bottas with a 12-second lead. He's checked out. He's done. And here comes the tail enders. Jackson followed by Ocon, followed by Schumacher. Alpine have certainly not been at the races this weekend. I think it was grid penalties that held them back in qualifying. But penultimate row of the grid for Alpine. It's definitely not been their year so far. Well, definitely not their weekend anyway. But of course, Alpine, like Haas, most of their resources going into next year's car, if we get there. And with the cost fears that supposedly came out at the British Grand Prix, if I'm thinking about it, I think the only people that would have cash problems would be Haas, sadly. We hate to say it, but maybe they're the only team that fears it. But all their resources have gone into the car. They need 2022 to happen, Jackson or not. They need 2022 for the Rex to happen. They need to push to get these Reds over the line, because if they don't, then their resourcing has been for nothing. Of course, the silver lining in that is they can have another year to be better prepared, and Haas will be ultra prepared. They could walk it. I mean, the consensus agreement is Haas will be back with a bang in 2022. Mick Schumacher will be in his second year, and he normally gets better in the second year by some margin. But to be fair, Mick's had a pretty decent first year, aside from having no points. It's been a Mick Schumacher kind of first year, really. He's gone very quietly about his business. Well, Jackson, well, he's been staring all the headlines, hasn't he? Passing moves, epic defense, 3 points to his name as well. But today, Jackson is coming back down to earth with a thump today, sadly. And, even with DRS, Mick Schumacher's Haas can't get anywhere near the Alpine, Esteban Ocon. And now he's going down the inside of Jackson to turn 2, and Jackson's going to try and fight it out. And he's going to lose out. And you don't really see Aiden Jackson lose a fight, but I think that's just how. Oh, he tried something to turn 4, but again, logic won the day there. And he pulls to the right. He's going to let his teammate through, Aiden Jackson. No point holding Mick up. He's definitely not at one with that car this weekend.
Guys, this car's a handful. I feel so slow. I'm going to let Mick past. Copy that, Aiden. You're doing great. Just make sure you get the car to the end. We know it's tough. Sorry. Man, this thing won't even turn. Sorry. Copy that.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. The frustration has set in today for Aiden Jackson. We don't really hear him angry, but he's just struggling to turn the car today. It's been a tough one for him, and the frustration has finally ebbed through Aiden Jackson. He's kept his head and he's kept his cool, but today it's just been frustrating for him, and it's showing today, unfortunately. And Haas trying to encourage him, but they know getting to the end of the race is important. Getting to the end of races is the most important thing for Haas this year. And Jackson is doing that, and Schumacher is doing that, apart from Silverstone. And I think it was Baku he retired with car trouble. We thought we were going to lose Aiden Jackson, but the RS deployment has not been a problem and has now been fixed. But even with the RS, Jackson just doesn't have the car to defend today. And this car just really isn't used to this track. He'll be glad to get out. Spa is going to be much more of a better track for HAAS standards anyway. But here at the front today, we've not talked about it a lot because it has been a procession race, sadly. But credit to Charles Leclerc today because he's done a great job of staying ahead of Lewis Hamilton. An 8-time Hungarian Grand Prix winner knows his way around here. But today, he's not even had the legs of Leclerc, let alone his teammate Bottas, who is now up to I think that's a 13-second lead. Bottas is really just coasting to the end. Got 9 laps remaining. Even with DRS, Hamilton just doesn't... He just doesn't seem there. We know that following cars is Mercedes' weakness. So when they do leave from the front, it is really a procession time. To be fair, Red Bull haven't had a stunning race either. If there's anyone that is having a stunning year, it's Ferrari. Aside from obviously Hamilton and Bottas, Ferrari are the ones having a very unexpectedly decent year, to be fair. Carlos Sainz winning the French Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc is second ahead of the Mercedes right now. Sainz is holding on to the Mercedes behind him. And we've got Max Verstappen in 5th. And the rest of the top 10, Norris, Perez is down to 7th. Tsunoda is now up to 8th. Ahead of Sebastian Vettel and Pierre Gasly, to be fair, is back in the points. Daniel Ricciardo has made his way up to 11th. A good drive from him as well. And I think it's Valtteri Bottas coming to lap Aiden Jackson, unfortunately. For Jackson, just to compound his matters today. Already frustrated with the car, and now he's going to get lapped. Running the second time in his career, Aiden Jackson. He's never lapped in his junior years. Got lapped at Miller Romano. In fact, I think he got lapped a couple more times, actually. And your heart goes out to Aiden Jackson. He's had it rough this weekend. And what can he do in the Aston Martin? It's only a 4th at the moment, because there's no denying or confirming of the rumours at the moment. And Jackson is to get a promotion. Aston Martin, and Mercedes might be next. If that is the trajectory they're going with him, then maybe, just maybe, he may be Lewis Hamilton's replacement. Of course, Hamilton has another year or 2 on his contract, after extending it at the end of last season after winning the championship for the 7th time, going for his 8th, which would put him even further ahead of the great Michael Schumacher in terms of records. As I have stated, and probably many others have stated many times, in some cases, Lewis is already ahead of him. Took the poles, took the wins, took the podiums. And, well, he won't get it today, but he was on the verge of having the most successful winning record on a single track. It was Michael Schumacher in France with 8, and I think after Silverstone, Lewis Hamilton tied that with his 8th win round there. But he's not going to get his 9th to put him ahead of that today, because he can't even pass Charles Leclerc. Strangely, although this track is obviously notorious for the lack of overtaking opportunities around here, it is a tight, twisty track. Like we said at the top of the show, it's Monaco without the barriers, really. And no one has really passed anybody since the start, to be fair. Well, we always said that the 2022 car will allow everyone to follow more closely. We've had, apart from a couple of big gaps in the field, a lot of cars have been very close to each other today. We just haven't been able to pass. And Bottas is in a whole heap of traffic, but he's increased his lead to 14 seconds over Charles Leclerc as we approach the final laps of the race. Hamilton still, even with DRS, Can't get anywhere near Charles Leclerc. You see the sparks coming out of Lewis Hamilton there. That's the floor of the car. And we've had problems with that in the past. Michael Schumacher was disqualified from the 1994 Belgian Grand Prix after taking the win comfortably. His floorboard was deemed illegal and he was disqualified. Oh! Was that... Oh! Lewis Hamilton is out! I'm pretty sure that's an engine failure. That's Lewis Hamilton out of the race! Oh dear! Well, I wasn't really sure what that was. I thought it was brake dust at start. But no! Hamilton has pulled to the side for the first retirement of the season for Mercedes. And now what does that mean for Bottas? They'll be monitoring it. They'll be telling him that Lewis is out. Ah, that is not what Lewis Hamilton needed in this race. The championship leader is out of the race. He could have won for a record 9th time. And that promotes Daniel Ricciardo up to 10th place. He started last on the grid. And to be fair, he probably profited from pit stops mostly, but you've got to credit Ricciardo. Right place, right time. Now he's P10. Pink Gasly's P9. Now the Tories again. They've not been ahead of Red Bull today. Let's be fair on that. Well, Valtteri Bottas now will be proceeding with caution as Aiden Jackson gets lapped by a Ferrari. I'm not sure who it was. Was it Carlos Sainz or Charles Leclerc? He was lapping there. I think it was Sainz because there's Leclerc. Now Jackson gets out of the way. It's very hard to get out of the way around here, but he has done. Now that puts Max Verstappen and Lando Norris in striking range of Carlos Sainz. He's not got DRS from his teammate. Carlos Sainz could be vulnerable now. I don't think Jackson held him up. Definitely didn't intend to anyway. Max Verstappen, he's not had the greatest of years to be fair. But he's on the verge of a podium and he started 8th. So credit to Max Verstappen. He's done his bit today, but no one was getting near Valtteri Bottas. Or Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc for that matter. And Hamilton is now out of this race. Valtteri Bottas now will take the lead in the Drivers' Championship. He will be 20 points ahead, I think. And if he grabs the fastest lap, it'll be even more. That's less, just under a race win then for Valtteri Bottas. I've got to say this, Valtteri Bottas has definitely been the revelation of the season so far at the front. A little talk over whether the Mercedes will go back to the silver paint scheme for next year. I think that would make sense. I think, I could be wrong, but I think that says 19 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. Valtteri Bottas has dominated this Hungarian Grand Prix, and he's going to take the win and the championship lead back from Lewis Hamilton as he was retired from this race. And looks like it might be the only retirement. And to make things worse for Aiden Jackson and his fans, he is now 11 seconds now behind his own teammate. So that really proves you how much Jackson's been struggling this weekend. Poor kid. But he's had more good races than bad, to be fair. And now, this will be interesting. As if that's Kimi Räikkönen, then that is P14. Sergio Perez has set the fastest lap of a 1:19.3. That could be vital for Red Bull if either of them were beating either Ferraris right now, which they're not. Max is in P4, stuck behind Sainz. Charles Leclerc is in a comfortable P2. So all that really does is not really limit the damage somewhat, because Red Bull are finding it hard to even keep up with Ferrari this year. It's not just their engine failures they've had. DRS has been very ineffective this Grand Prix. And there's Valtteri Bottas. Is he chasing Raikkonen? Yes, he was. He's passed it. So that's everyone up to Kimi Raikkonen lapped. So that's P13, I believe. And that really just proves how dominant Mercedes have been today in the hands of Bottas. It's been a field day for Valtteri. And dare we say it, he is in a real good position now to challenge for this championship. We've not had a shade of this for 5 or so years now. Last time we had teammates battling each other in Mercedes, it all went really pear-shaped, where it became very difficult to even manage between Hamilton and Rosberg. I don't think it's going to get that bad between him and Valtteri. Valtteri's a lot, at least in this scenario. Valtteri's a very cool head, to be fair. But let's be fair, Valtteri to some degree has had a better season with Lewis so far. Lewis Hamilton is still, I'd say, about 3 wins away from 100. He still can't get there at the moment. He's left the pole century far behind in his rear-view mirror, but 100 wins is proving a bit more difficult to get this year. And that's because this man. Because Red Bull have really floundered with their reliability anyway. And that's a blue flag for Fernando Alonso, although he doesn't seem to be ahead of Bottas, so that could be just Charles and the rest coming up to lap Raikkonen. Well, it's not been the most entertaining Grand Prix of the season, but it's been another dominant one for Mercedes, and in particular for Valtteri Bottas. No one was catching him today. Absolutely walking it. It is the 4th or even 5th victory of the season for Valtteri Bottas. He takes the win and the championship lead. He is in a real position to win this title. Could he be the man that stops Lewis Hamilton taking the most unprecedented thing of all? And that's an 8th World Championship to put him ahead of Michael Schumacher. It could be his own teammate that stops him. And would that be a story? And if Valtteri is to be replaced by Russell, then wow. But we've still got another 8 rounds to go. And here's Aiden Jackson crossing the line a lap down. It has not been his day, but it's certainly been the day for Valtteri Bottas. He wins, and driver of the day goes to Daniel Ricciardo. And to be fair, that is a fair thing. But yep. Well, it's vintage Mercedes, but it's not the Mercedes we were expecting. But there will be concerns. Lewis Hamilton out of the race with an engine failure today. And that will be a point of concern for sure. And that is the first Mercedes engine failure of the season. And it fell to the man who was tipped to win it, not the other one. And well, your top 10, Valtteri Bottas wins it from both Ferraris. Max Verstappen did well to get from 8th to 4th. And Norris and Perez. Perez's strategy was a bad call today. Tsunoda P7, very good effort from him. From, I think it was P9 on the grid. Vettel is 8th, followed by Gasly and Daniel Ricciardo. That completes your top 10. Credit to Daniel Ricciardo getting into the points from last on the grid. Perez will get the extra point for the fastest lap. So that's 9 points for Perez instead of the traditional 8 then. And it's pretty much as you were. And a very, very, very lonely race for the HAAS boys today. Mick Schumacher even getting the much better Aiden Jackson today. He did not look at it in this race at all. Lewis Hamilton is your only retirement. Valtteri Bottas then with a 20-point lead over Hamilton in the Drivers' Championship. Sainz and Leclerc, if they keep it up, they could get somewhere, but it does seem to be most likely between the two Mercedes boys for the championship this weekend. There's still plenty of points to be earned. Jackson still holds on to 15th despite his lonely race. Schumacher, both Williams and Kimi Raikkonen have yet to score at all. Mercedes with a 128, I believe that is, point lead over Ferrari, who have a 20-point lead over Red Bull. McLaren ahead of AlphaTauri, Alpine staying ahead of Aston Martin, weirdly enough. Haas lucky to keep ahead of Alfa Romeo. They started on the 6th row and could have got points today, and they didn't, so Haas will count their lucky stars. Valtteri Bottas takes the win today for the Hungarian Grand Prix, and it never looked in doubt from lap 1. And next is the second jewel in Formula 1's crown, Spa-Francorchamps. It will most likely rain, but it'll always be epic. We'll see you then. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.